The message came through at 2:17 a.m. Not a call, not a voicemail, just a cold, quiet text sitting on my phone screen while desert wind rattled the metal siding of our temporary barracks. I almost didn't check it. When you're deployed long enough, you learn to ignore notifications until morning. Most of them are nothing important: spam, bank alerts, or group chats from friends trying to pretend life back home hasn't moved on without you. But something about that vibration woke me up instantly. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the universe giving me one last warning. I rolled over on the thin military cot, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and unlocked my phone. The sender was Emily, my wife. My chest tightened immediately. Emily rarely texted that late. She knew the time difference. If she messaged me during my night, it usually meant something important. For a second, I thought maybe something had happened. An accident. A family emergency. Maybe she missed me. God, I wish it had been any of those. Instead, the message read, "Locks changed, don't come." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No follow-up. Just 6 words. For a moment, my brain refused to process them. I stared at the screen so long, the brightness dimmed automatically. Locks changed, don't come. I reread it again. And again. The desert outside was silent, except for distant generators humming under the moonlight. Inside the barracks, 20 other soldiers were asleep. But in that moment, it felt like I was the only person left on Earth. Emily and I had been married 4 years. Before the deployment, things weren't perfect, but they weren't like this. We met in Austin, Texas, at a small bar near the river. She laughed at one of my terrible jokes, and before I knew it, we were closing the place together at 2 a.m. She had that kind of smile that made you believe life was going to work out. The kind that makes you take risks. The kind that makes a man believe in forever. I proposed to her 2 years later, under a giant oak tree in Zilker Park. She cried. Said yes before I even finished asking. My buddies used to joke that Emily was way out of my league. Maybe they were right. But she loved me. Or at least I thought she did. When I got deployment orders 9 months ago, she cried again, different tears that time. The night before I left, she clung to me like the world was ending. I hate this, she whispered into my chest. I hate that you're leaving. I'll be back before you know it, I told her. That's what soldiers always say. We promise time will move fast. We promise distance won't change anything. We promise everything will still be waiting when we come home. But the truth, time moves differently when you're gone. And sometimes, the life you left behind doesn't wait. I stared at her message again. Locks changed, don't come. No context. No argument beforehand. Our last conversation had been normal. 3 days ago, we talked about the dog chewing up the couch. 2 days ago, she sent me a picture of the sunset from our backyard. Yesterday, she texted, "Miss you, can't wait until you're home." So what the hell happened in 24 hours? My first instinct was anger. The second was confusion. But the third feeling, the one that settled like a cold weight in my stomach, was something worse. Fear. Because messages like that don't come out of nowhere. Something had changed. Or someone had. I typed back immediately. Emily, what does that mean? The message delivered. Then nothing. No typing bubbles. No response. Minutes passed. I watched the screen like it might suddenly explain everything. Still nothing. I sat up in the cot, my heart pounding harder than it had during some of our training drills. Across the room, my buddy Marcus snored loudly, completely unaware that my life had just cracked open. I checked the message again. Still the same 6 words. Cold. Final. Locks changed, don't come. It felt less like a text, and more like a door slamming shut. Finally, after about 10 minutes of staring at the screen, I realized something. If Emily had changed the locks, it meant she expected me to come home, which meant she didn't want me there. And that raised a far worse question. Who did she want there? The thought hit me like a punch to the ribs. Because soldiers hear stories. Too many stories. The jokes about Jody aren't really jokes. Every deployed guy knows the name. Jody is the invisible man who shows up while you're gone. The guy driving your truck. Sleeping in your bed. Living the life you left behind. Most of us pretend it won't happen to us. We trust our wives. We trust our marriages. But trust gets fragile when there are 8,000 miles between you. My phone buzzed again. My heart jumped. But it was Emily. It was a notification from my bank app. I almost ignored it. Then I noticed the alert message. Large transaction detected. That was strange. Emily handled most of our bills while I was deployed, but we rarely made big purchases. I opened the notification, and my stomach dropped. $12,480, furniture purchase. Charged to a store in Austin. Timestamp, yesterday evening. Furniture. $12,000 worth. We hadn't talked about buying anything. Our house was already fully furnished. Unless she was replacing something. Or someone. A cold realization crawled into my mind. New locks. New furniture. And a message telling me not to come home. It suddenly felt less like a random text, and more like a decision that had already been made. My phone buzzed again. This time it was her. My chest tightened as I opened the message. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally, the text came through. Just move on. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just another 4 words that felt like someone twisting a knife slowly into my chest. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands were shaking. Not from sadness. Not even from anger. Something colder. Something quieter. Because in that moment, a strange calm settled over me. Emily thought she had closed the door. She thought sending a text was enough to erase 4 years of marriage. She thought I would beg. Plead. Ask for answers. But she didn't know something about me. Something deployment teaches you. When everything collapses, you learn how to survive anyway. So instead of writing the 1,000 things running through my head, instead of demanding explanations, instead of calling her in the middle of the night, I typed exactly 3 words. And hit send. As you wish. Then I placed my phone on the small metal desk beside my bed and stared out the barracks window into the empty desert night. Because Emily had just made a choice. What she didn't realize yet was that I had just made one too. And mine was going to change everything. After I sent the message, I didn't sleep. Not even for a minute. The desert sky outside the barracks slowly shifted from black to a dull gray as morning crept in. The generators kept humming the same way they always did, like nothing in the world had changed. But inside my chest, everything had. I kept replaying Emily's messages in my mind. Locks changed, don't come. Just move on. It didn't feel real. It felt like reading someone else's story. Across the room, Marcus finally rolled over and groaned awake. Man, why are you sitting like that? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. You look like you just saw a ghost. I hadn't even realized I was still sitting upright on the cot. My phone was still in my hand. Emily texted, I said quietly. Marcus blinked a few times, still half asleep. That good or bad? I turned the phone around and showed him the screen. He leaned forward. Read the messages. Then leaned back slowly. Damn. He didn't say anything else for a moment. Marcus had been in the army 10 years, long enough to know that sometimes there just weren't the right words. Finally he said, You think she's serious? I gave a small, humorless laugh. She changed the locks. Marcus rubbed his jaw. That's pretty serious. I looked down at the phone again. Still no new messages from Emily. No calls. Nothing. Marcus sat on the edge of his bed, thinking. Look, I'm not trying to jump to conclusions, he said carefully, but have things been weird between you two lately? I thought about it. Not really, I said. But the moment the words left my mouth, memories started creeping in. Little things. Things I hadn't paid attention to before. Emily being too busy for video calls sometimes. Shorter replies to my messages. That one time she canceled a call because she was out with friends, but the background sounded strangely quiet. At the time, I told myself it was nothing. Now, every memory felt suspicious. Marcus must have seen the change in my expression. Yeah, he muttered, that look right there. I sighed. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. He nodded slowly. That happens. We sat there in silence for a while. Then Marcus asked the question I'd been avoiding. So what are you gonna do? I looked at the pale morning light creeping through the window. 3 months. That's how long I had left in my deployment. 3 months before I was scheduled to go home. 3 months before I'd planned to walk through my own front door. Now apparently, I wasn't welcome there. I don't know, I admitted. Marcus stood up and stretched. Well, first thing you should do is check your finances. I frowned. What do you mean? He gave me a look. Man, if someone suddenly tells you not to come home and starts changing locks, you better make sure they're not also emptying your bank accounts. My stomach tightened. I grabbed my phone again and opened the banking app. What I saw made my chest go cold. The furniture purchase wasn't the only thing. There were more transactions. $3,200, home renovation store. $1,150, mattress outlet. $780, Dacre boutique. All within the last week. Altogether, almost $18,000. I felt my pulse in my temples. Marcus. Yeah. She's been spending like crazy. He leaned over to look at the screen. Holy hell. That's our savings account, I said quietly. The one Emily and I had been building since we got married. We had plans for that money. A bigger house someday. Maybe kids. Maybe finally starting the small business Emily used to talk about. Now, it looked like she was redecorating the house. Without me. Marcus shook his head slowly. Bro, I'm gonna say something you probably don't want to hear. Go ahead. If she's buying new furniture, changing locks, and telling you not to come home. He hesitated, then finished the sentence anyway. She might already have someone living there. The words landed like a stone in my chest. I wanted to argue. Wanted to say Emily wasn't that kind of person. But the evidence sitting on my phone screen made it hard. Very hard. I swallowed slowly. Yeah, I said. Marcus clapped a hand on my shoulder. Listen, whatever's going on, don't do anything stupid right now. I won't. Good. He pointed at my phone. Start documenting everything. What do you mean? Screenshots, bank statements, messages, all of it. I frowned. Why? Marcus gave me a look that was part sympathy, part practicality. Because if this turns into a divorce. His voice dropped slightly. You're gonna want proof. The word divorce hung in the air between us. I hadn't even said it out loud yet. But hearing it made the situation suddenly feel very real. Very final. Marcus continued. And if she's spending shared money on someone else? He shrugged. That's gonna matter in court. Court. Lawyers. Divorce. My entire life was turning into something I never imagined. And it had all started with one message. Locks changed, don't come. I leaned back on the cot and exhaled slowly. You know the worst part, I said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What? I still don't even know why. He nodded quietly. Yeah. That was the part eating at me the most. Not the money. Not the locks. Not even the possibility of another guy. It was the lack of explanation. 4 years of marriage. And all I got was 10 words over text. Marcus glanced at his watch. We've got briefing in 20 minutes, he said. You gonna be okay? I thought about it. Honestly. No. But soldiers don't really get the luxury of falling apart on schedule. I'll manage, I said. He nodded. Good. Then he paused at the door. One more thing. Yeah. Marcus looked back at me with a serious expression. Sometimes when people do something like this, it's because they think they've already won. What do you mean? They think you're too far away to do anything about it. He shrugged. They get comfortable. I frowned slightly. And Marcus smirked just a little. And comfortable people make mistakes. The door closed behind him. I sat there alone again, staring at my phone. At Emily's messages. At the bank transactions. At the quiet proof that the life I thought I had might already be gone. But Marcus's words echoed in my mind. Comfortable people make mistakes. I opened the banking app again. Then slowly switched to another account. One Emily didn't know about. An investment account I'd started before we got married. It held most of the money I'd saved during my years in the Army. Money Emily had never asked about. Never paid attention to. A thought slowly formed in my mind. Cold. Careful. Strategic. If Emily wanted me out of the house. Fine. If she wanted a new life without me. Fine. But if she thought I was just going to disappear quietly. She didn't know me very well. Because while she was busy replacing the furniture in our house, I was about to start replacing something too. My future. And when I finally went home, it wouldn't be to beg. It would be to finish what she started. For the next few days, I didn't contact Emily. Not once. No texts. No calls. Nothing. At first it was because I didn't trust myself to speak without saying something I'd regret. But after a while, it became something else. Strategy. Marcus was right about one thing. Comfortable people make mistakes. And Emily clearly felt very comfortable. 3 days passed before she messaged me again. I was sitting in the mess hall halfway through a terrible cup of Army coffee when my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. Emily. My heart didn't race this time. It just felt heavy. I opened the message. Did you see my texts? I stared at it for a second. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just checking if I'd received the eviction notice she sent like it was a pizza delivery confirmation. I locked the phone and put it back in my pocket. Marcus noticed immediately. That her? Yeah. What'd she say? Asked if I saw the texts. Marcus let out a slow whistle. Wow. I shrugged. Yeah. You gonna respond? I thought about it. Then shook my head. Not yet. Marcus nodded approvingly. Good move. That night back in the barracks, I did exactly what Marcus suggested. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of every message. Bank transactions. Receipts connected to our shared accounts. Even the timestamps. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. Emily had spent $22,000 in less than 2 weeks. Furniture. Appliances. Paint supplies. Home decor. It looked less like casual shopping, and more like someone completely remodeling a house. Our house. But the transaction that made my stomach twist came 2 nights later. $2,400, king-size mattress. King size. We already had a queen bed. Why would she upgrade? Unless. My jaw tightened. Unless someone else was sleeping in it. Marcus was sitting across from me when I saw the charge. He didn't even need me to explain. King size, huh? Yeah. He sighed. Man. I closed the banking app slowly. Yep. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Marcus leaned forward. You ever thought about calling someone back home? Like who? A neighbor, friend, anybody who might know what's going on. I considered it. But the truth was Emily and I had kept mostly to ourselves. Most of our neighbors were friendly but distant. Still, there was one person. Old Mr. Henderson next door. Retired Air Force. The guy practically lived on his front porch watching the street like it was his personal security system. If anything strange had been happening, he'd know. I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found his number. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You really gonna do it? Yeah. The phone rang 3 times. Then a familiar, gravelly voice answered. Well, I'll be damned if it isn't my favorite soldier. Hey, Mr. Henderson. Son, how the hell are you? When you coming home? I hesitated. That's actually why I'm calling. Oh. I took a slow breath. Have you noticed anything unusual around my house lately? There was a pause on the other end. Not long, but long enough to make my stomach tight. Define unusual, he said. My grip on the phone tightened. Like people coming over, construction, something like that. Another pause. Then he sighed. Son, I didn't want to be the one to tell you this. My heart sank. But since you're asking, I closed my eyes. Tell me. Well, there's been a guy. The words felt like someone dropping ice water down my spine. A guy, I repeated quietly. Yeah. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. Been seeing him around for about 2 months now. 2 months. That meant he showed up while I was still halfway through deployment. Is he there often? I asked. Pretty much every day. My jaw clenched. Does he stay overnight? Mr. Henderson didn't answer immediately. Which was answer enough. Yeah, he finally said. Thought maybe he was a relative or something. My vision blurred slightly as anger crept into my chest. Did you ever see him move stuff into the house? I asked. Funny you mention that, Mr. Henderson said. About a week ago, there was a big furniture delivery truck. Of course there was. Guy was there helping bring everything inside. I felt my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Marcus was watching me closely. He already knew what the conversation was about. Mr. Henderson kept talking. And yesterday, they repainted the front door. I frowned. They what? Yeah, dark gray now. Looks nice actually. Dark gray. Emily had always hated that color. I suddenly realized something disturbing. She wasn't just redecorating. She was erasing everything we built together. Like the house had to be redesigned to fit a new life. One that didn't include me. Mr. Henderson, I said quietly. Yeah, son. Can you describe the guy? He chuckled lightly. Well, younger than me, that's for sure. Anything else? Tall, probably mid-30s, drives a black pickup. My stomach twisted again. Because suddenly, a memory surfaced. A name. A face. Emily's coworker. Ryan. She used to mention him sometimes. Ryan at work said this. Ryan thinks that. Ryan helped with the office move. At the time, I never thought twice about it. Now it felt like every casual mention had been a warning I ignored. I forced my voice to stay calm. Have you heard them arguing or anything? Nope, Mr. Henderson said. They seem pretty happy. Pretty happy? Those words burned. I thanked him for the information and hung up. Marcus leaned forward immediately. Well, there's a guy, I said flatly. He exhaled slowly. How long? 2 months. Marcus cursed under his breath. Damn. I stared at the floor for a long moment. Then I said something that surprised even me. I want to see him. Marcus blinked. You mean when you get home? I shook my head slowly. No. I looked up. I mean before that. Marcus frowned. How exactly are you planning to do that? I picked up my phone again. Opened the security app connected to our house cameras. Emily had forgotten one small detail when she changed the locks. Something she probably never even thought about. The garage camera. It wasn't inside the house, so she never disabled it. And right now, it was still connected to my phone. I tapped the live feed. The video loaded. Marcus leaned closer. And there they were, standing in my kitchen. Emily and a man I'd never met. Laughing together. Drinking wine. In my house, Marcus muttered under his breath. Jesus. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the screen, watching the life I thought I had, being lived by someone else. And for the first time since the messages arrived, the anger inside me finally crystallized into something sharp, something focused, because Emily thought sending a text would end our story. But what she didn't realize yet was that she had just started a war. And when I finally came home, neither of them would be ready for what happened next. I watched the garage camera every night after that. Not because I enjoyed it. Far from it. Each time I opened the live feed, it felt like dragging broken glass through my chest. But I needed to see it, needed to understand exactly what had replaced the life I left behind. Marcus stopped asking after the third night. He'd just glance over at my phone sometimes and shake his head. "Man, you're stronger than me," he said once. I couldn't watch that. But I wasn't watching for pain. I was watching for information. Patterns. Mistakes. Anything that might matter later. The guy, Ryan, I was almost certain now, came and went like he owned the place. Black pickup truck. Same one Mr. Henderson mentioned. He parked in my driveway every night. Sometimes he carried groceries inside. Sometimes Emily met him at the door with a kiss. The first time I saw that, I had to step outside the barracks just to breathe. Marcus followed me. "You all right?" I stared out at the endless desert horizon. She kissed him. Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. Then he muttered, "Yeah, that'll do it." I clenched my fists until my knuckles turned white. 4 years. 4 years of marriage. And she replaced me in 2 months. Maybe less. Back inside, I opened the camera feed again. Marcus sat beside me this time. Ryan was sitting at the kitchen counter, laughing at something Emily said. They looked comfortable. Relaxed. Like a couple that had lived together for years. Marcus leaned closer. "Zoom in." I adjusted the camera. Ryan lifted a glass of wine. And I noticed something that made my stomach drop. He was wearing my watch. Not just any watch. The one Emily gave me for our 2nd anniversary. I recognized the dark leather band instantly. Marcus saw it too. Oh hell no. My jaw tightened so hard it hurt. Yeah. For a moment, the anger was almost overwhelming. I imagined flying home early. Kicking down the door. Dragging him out of the house. But that's exactly the kind of reaction that ruins lives. And Emily already took enough from me. I wasn't about to lose my career too. So instead, I started planning. 2 weeks later, my leave request was approved. Not a full return home. Just 7 days emergency leave. Officially, I told my commanding officer it was a family situation. Which wasn't a lie. Marcus grinned when I told him. "Well damn," he said, "guess the reunion tour is happening sooner than expected." Something like that. "You gonna warn her you're coming?" I shook my head. "No." Marcus laughed softly. "Good." The flight home felt longer than my entire deployment. From the Middle East to Germany. Germany to Chicago. Chicago to Austin, Texas. Every airport, every delay, every announcement over the speakers felt like time slowing down on purpose. By the time I landed in Austin, it was almost midnight. The humid Texas air hit me the moment I stepped outside the airport. It smelled like home. Or at least it used to. I rented a car and drove straight toward the neighborhood. The streets looked exactly the same. Same streetlights. Same quiet sidewalks. Same houses. Except when I turned onto my block. My chest tightened. Because Mr. Henderson wasn't exaggerating. The house looked different. The front door was painted dark gray now. New porch lights. Even the landscaping looked freshly trimmed. Like someone had polished the entire place. Except it didn't feel like my home anymore. It felt like a stranger's house, wearing my memories. I parked 2 houses down and turned off the headlights. And there it was. The black pickup truck. Ryan's truck. Parked comfortably in my driveway. Marcus had asked me earlier what my plan was. The truth. I didn't fully know yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't here to scream. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to finish this properly. I stepped out of the rental car and walked slowly down the street. Mr. Henderson's porch light flicked on the moment he saw me. The old man practically jumped out of his chair. "Well, I'll be damned," he whispered. "You're actually here." I smiled slightly. "Hey, Mr. Henderson." He walked over and shook my hand like he hadn't seen me in years. "Son, I didn't think you'd show up this fast." "Neither did she." He glanced toward my house. "The truck has been there since 6. "Figured." Mr. Henderson lowered his voice. "You sure you want to walk in there?" I nodded. "Yeah." He studied my face carefully. "You look calm." I shrugged. "Anger burns out eventually." He chuckled. "Wish I learned that at your age." We stood there quietly for a moment. Then he said something that surprised me. "You know, your wife told the neighbors you two separated months ago." I blinked. "She did." "Yep." He crossed his arms. "Said the marriage was already over before you deployed." A bitter laugh escaped my throat. "That's convenient." Mr. Henderson nodded. "People tell themselves a lot of stories when they're doing something wrong." I looked back at the house. Lights were on inside. Through the window, I could see silhouettes moving in the kitchen. Emily. Ryan. Living their perfect little lie. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. "You want me nearby, just in case?" I shook my head. "No, I got it." I walked up the driveway slowly. The black pickup loomed beside me like a reminder of everything that had happened. When I reached the front door, I noticed something else. The welcome mat. It used to say, "Home Sweet Home." Now it said, "New Beginnings." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I laughed quietly to myself. Emily really had gone all in on the theme. New locks. New furniture. New man. New life. But there was one small problem with her new beginning. She forgot to finish the old ending. I raised my hand. Knocked twice on the door. Inside, footsteps approached. The handle turned. And when the door opened, Emily's face went completely pale. Like she'd just seen a ghost standing on her front porch. "Hi, Emily," I said calmly. Behind her, Ryan stood up from the kitchen table. Confused. Uncomfortable. Probably wondering who the hell I was. Emily's voice barely came out. You're supposed to be overseas." I smiled faintly. "Yeah." Then I stepped forward slightly and looked past her into the house. "My house looks different." Ryan finally spoke. "Who the hell are you?" I turned my eyes to him slowly and said the one sentence that made the entire room go silent. "I'm the husband she forgot to divorce." For a moment, nobody moved. The air inside the house felt heavy, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Emily stood frozen in the doorway. Ryan looked from me to her, confusion turning slowly into realization. And I just stood there calmly. The strange thing about anger is that when it finally burns long enough, it stops being fire. It becomes ice. Emily finally found her voice. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. I tilted my head slightly. "I live here." Ryan frowned. "Emily, what is he talking about?" She didn't answer him. She couldn't even look at him. Instead, she stared at me like I had just broken the rules of reality. "You said, 'as you wish,'" she stammered. "I thought that meant—" "You thought it meant I'd disappear," I finished calmly. Her silence answered the question. Ryan stepped forward slightly, trying to take control of the situation. "Look, man, I don't know what's going on here, but—" "Oh, you know exactly what's going on," I interrupted. My voice stayed steady. "Ryan Wright." His eyebrows lifted. "How do you—" "You work with my wife." Emily's shoulders sagged slightly. The truth was already standing in the room. Ryan looked uncomfortable now. Not confident anymore. Not the guy laughing in my kitchen on the security camera. Just a man realizing he might have walked into something bigger than he expected. Emily told me you guys were separated, he said carefully. I looked at her. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. Separated, I asked. She finally whispered, I was going to tell you. When? Silence. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I didn't know you were still together. I nodded slowly. I believe you. And strangely enough, I actually did. Because men like Ryan rarely see themselves as villains. They believe the version of the story they're given. And Emily had clearly written a new one. But the problem with lies is they collapse when the truth walks through the door. Ryan looked at Emily again. You told me the marriage was over. She still said nothing. The room felt painfully quiet. Then I stepped inside the house. Emily moved aside automatically. Like her body reacted before her brain could stop it. And suddenly, I was standing in what used to be my living room. Except it didn't look like my living room anymore. New couch. New rug. New artwork on the walls. Even the smell was different. Ryan spoke again. Man, if you want, I can just. You should leave, I said calmly. He hesitated. Looked at Emily. She still hadn't looked at either of us. Finally, he sighed. Yeah, okay. He grabbed his keys from the counter. But before he reached the door, I said something else. Oh, and Ryan. He stopped. Turned around slowly. You might want to take the watch off. His eyes dropped to his wrist. The anniversary watch. His face turned red instantly. He removed it awkwardly and set it on the counter. Sorry, he muttered. Then he walked out the door. The sound of his truck starting echoed through the quiet neighborhood. And just like that, it was only Emily and me left in the house. The same house she told me never to return to. She finally looked up. Tears were already forming in her eyes. I didn't think you'd come back, she said softly. I leaned against the kitchen counter. You changed the locks. She wiped her cheek quickly. I thought you'd understand. I almost laughed. Understand what? That we were over. Her voice cracked. I was lonely. The word hung in the air. Lonely. I studied her for a long moment. Then I said something she clearly wasn't expecting. I know. She blinked. You know. Yeah. I nodded toward the house. You didn't just replace me. Her eyebrows pulled together. What do you mean? I gestured toward the new furniture. The couch you picked with me. The dining table we built together. The photos that used to hang on that wall. I looked directly into her eyes. You replaced everything. She started crying harder. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. That's how it always happens, I said quietly. Silence filled the room again. Then she whispered the question she'd been avoiding. So what now? I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. Her eyes widened slightly. What's that? I placed it on the counter between us. Divorce papers. Her breath caught. You already's. I had time to think. She stared at the envelope like it might explode. I thought you'd fight for us, she said weakly. And that was the moment I finally understood everything. Emily didn't expect consequences. She expected drama. Begging. Crying. Some grand emotional battle where she would still feel important. Instead, I gave her something much colder. Acceptance. I picked up the anniversary watch from the counter. Slipped it back onto my wrist. Then I said the last thing she probably expected to hear. You already ended the marriage, Emily. I nodded toward the envelope. I'm just doing the paperwork. Tears streamed down her face now. I made a mistake. Maybe she did. Maybe she didn't. But the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. I walked toward the door. And just before stepping outside, I turned back once. You told me not to come home. Her shoulders shook as she cried. I opened the door. And I respected your wish. Then I stepped into the night air. Mr. Henderson was still sitting on his porch. watching the entire street like always. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me. Well, I looked back at the house one last time. The lights were still on. Emily's silhouette stood in the kitchen window. Alone now. I exhaled slowly. It's handled. Mr. Henderson nodded approvingly. As I walked down the driveway, I realized something strange. For the first time in months, my chest didn't feel heavy anymore. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply walking away from someone who thought you never would. And somewhere behind me, in the house she rebuilt for a new life, Emily finally understood the cost of the message she sent that night. Locks changed don't come. Because sometimes, those words don't just close a door. They lock it forever.